These players just might be cooked, and you probably need to hear this so you know what to do with them. Ladd McConkey, panic meter out of 10, 6 for me.
7 for me.
Probably approaching a 7.
Yeah.
Realistically, it's not that Ladd McConkey is
bad.
Bad. It's not that he doesn't have the talent. It's not that he's not in the offense. He has all of those things. And he's still going to have weeks where he has, 15, 20 points plus. There's no denying Ladd's upside. But the fact of the matter is, upside is different than ceiling. And the reason that we questioned Ladd in the second round pretty much the entire offseason was because we were a little bit worried about his ceiling compared to some of the other running backs and wide receivers. He was going very similar to guys like Jonathan Taylor, guys like Josh Jacobs in fantasy drafts before the season. And what you've seen from Ladd is not a lack of being on the field, right? When you're looking at this last game against the Denver Broncos, he had more snaps than any other wide receiver. It's not a lack of targets. He's still getting decent targets, 9, 5, and 7. And it's not lack of Herbert volume as well. I mean, Herbert and Greg Roman have come out absolutely slinging it. 34, 27, and 47 pass attempts in the first 3 weeks. They've been throwing the ball there, and that should be a net positive for Ladd. And at the end of the day, it's probably why I'm at a 6, he's at a 7. I do think it's a positive development overall that they're throwing the ball there more in Los Angeles. The problem is, when Keenan Allen came back to the Chargers, I don't think any of us expected him to look like the Keenan Allen of old and not have ever missed a beat. As it turns out, when you don't play for the Bears, you're pretty good at football. And so Keenan Allen comes back, and while Ladd McConkey's targets aren't bad, he's been out-targeted on the season by both Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston. And we make the jokes about QJ, and he's been kind of a walking meme in fantasy football. But I want to say this. He had 9 targets, 6 receptions, 87 yards.
Third straight week now.
In that offense, I mean, he's a high-end wide receiver, too, right now, overall in fantasy football.
Biggest surprise of the year.
Quentin Johnston, this is not a flash in the pan for Quentin Johnston. Now, we've seen it 3 straight weeks where Quentin Johnston has had 7, 7, and 10 targets, and he's had touchdowns each of his first 2 weeks. He didn't have a touchdown today, still had 15 points, and still out-targeted Ladd. Johnston is a threat to take away from Ladd McConkey in that offense at this point. I mean, they're using Quentin Johnston differently than they've used him in the past, in the sense that they're not just giving him deep targets. When you're looking at his yards per target in week 3, where he had 10 targets, his yards per target was 8.9. Ladd's was obviously 5.86, and so he's going to continue to get those type of targets. But QJ, instead of the yards per target, at times last year, what you saw with him, 29, 14, 24. A very, very large depth of targets there. I mean, right now you're looking at it, and he's being used differently. And Keenan Allen's a red zone threat, and so is QJ. And I think the emergence of QJ and the involvement of Keenan Allen has, even though the passing volume has gone up there, has capped the ceiling of Ladd McConkey. So realistically, I'm panicking at a level 6, 6.5. I worry about his ceiling because of these guys. I don't think there are going to be games where he has 2 touchdowns and gets all the volume like he did last year. Last year, straight up, there were games where Ladd, from a volume standpoint and from a production standpoint, 29 points last year in Week 17, 10 targets and 2 touchdowns. In Week 8 against New Orleans, 29 points, 6 targets, 2 touchdowns. I know he's going to have touchdown games. I'm just not particularly convinced that they're going to come very often this year at all. Like, I think he's much less likely to have those type of target games and type of upside games this year. Panicking a little bit. I'm looking at the guys around Ladd McConkey, and if I can sell Ladd McConkey for some of these guys, we talked about T-Mac in the buys video yesterday. I would do it. I would sell Ladd McConkey for T-Mac at this point, and I know that may be a hot take, and that's okay if you disagree, because it's obviously they're right there next to each other. But I would do it, and I mean, I would sell him for Rome. I would sell him for A.J. Brown. I would probably sell him for Garrett Wilson at this point, who had another decent day today. How many points did Garrett Wilson have?
25 points.
So I get if you're not as concerned as we are and not as panicked as we are. That's totally fine. But I do think when you're looking deeper into the analytics here, Ladd McConkey, it does look like his ceiling is going to be a little bit capped this year with Keenan Allen and with QJ having real roles in that offense.
So Jamar Chase, got to talk about him. We talked about T. Higgins last week because I think that was easily the primary beneficiary of negative outcomes with the Joe Burrow injury in Cincinnati. But Jamar Chase had a really, really rough day today, as did everybody else in that offense. I will say my panic meter for Jamar Chase, while my expectations have simmered down a little bit for what his outlook could be with Browning for the rest of the season, my panic meter is still going to be like a 4. I don't think it's going to be as high as what is yours as a Jamar Chase owner. 5, just a little bit more. So here's my reasoning with Chase. Number one, in probably the worst in the worst and least competitive game that you are probably going to see rest of the season for Cincinnati, realistically. I still think it's going to be the worst game when we look back and we're like, dang, that one was really ugly. The rest was okay.
Yeah.
Minnesota specializes in blitzing, and for a guy like Jake Browning, that's really going to get him flustered. I want to reinforce that no one in the NFL can blitz like Brian Flores can, which means that not everybody in the league is going to blitz like Brian Flores does just constantly on a guy like Browning because they don't have the personnel to do it. They don't have the skill set defensively to do it. They literally, Minnesota's defense is built to blitz quarterbacks like this. So really, really rough day for all of these guys. Ja'Marr Chase in the worst possible game that you could imagine with no Joe Burrow and Jake Browning still salvaged his day with 9 points, and that was with a fumble. You take away that fumble, he has an 11-point day. It's pedestrian. It did not lose you your week.
No.
It did not.
Case in point.
And that's my main point right there. Your usage for Ja'Marr Chase in terms of being on the field, his snap share will not change. The number one game-breaking ability that Ja'Marr Chase has, the $40+ million wide receiver ability that he has, does not go away. We've seen the splits with him and Jake Browning. They are able to have very explosive, very productive weeks. While we're going to move him down, I think, a few spots in our rankings, it's not going to be to a point where we're like, oh, we are so out on Ja'Marr Chase at this point. He is a league loser. I think there is a world where if you drafted Ja'Marr Chase, you still can salvage your season, no problem. You can get by with Ja'Marr Chase on your team and have a chance at winning the league. I really do think that Ja'Marr Chase is not. I don't think he's shot for the rest of the year. I really don't. I think he's going to be totally fine.
The reason I'm a little bit higher at a 5, maybe a 5.5 or 6, is because I'm more panicked because I chose the 101 for Ja'Marr.
Yeah.
And probably if you have Ja'Marr, you did too. And so what this means, whereas we were looking for Ja'Marr to win us weeks before, the likelihood that he's going to, and I don't necessarily think he will, but I just don't think he's going to win weeks at a high enough rate that for him to return on investment. Yeah. At the 101, you should have a guy who is going to win you weeks by himself. And with Burrow, he can do that. With Browning, I think he can, but I think he's going to do it a lot less frequently. And what it means is the team I built around Ja'Marr Chase, luckily this week they mostly showed up, but the team I built around Ja'Marr Chase has to really do well. The pressure is on for me to have a good draft from rounds 2 through 10 and the guys I picked there because Ja'Marr Chase is not going to win me weeks by himself. And if you are in a situation where you have Ja'Marr Chase and you didn't do well in rounds 4, 5, 6, it's going to be ugly. And so I think for some of us that have Chase and built our entire strategy this year around him, that's where it becomes ugly. It would be the same thing with Bijan Robinson. It's a running back, so it's apples and oranges. Yeah. But it would be the same. CD's a better example. CD's obviously hurt, but if CD lost Dak, I mean, we're talking about the same type of deal where you built your whole strategy around drafting CD Lamb in the top 4. And so that's why I'm a little bit panicked from a roster construction standpoint.
Dang, dude, you should have drafted Puka 101.
I know. But realistically, you can't really move Chase behind Jefferson, JSN, London, Nico, BTJ, AJ Brown, all those guys who also have had rough stints this year at times.
Exactly.
And so that's why I
can't move them down super far.
No, and I get why people are going to be concerned. Alvin Kamara, 13, 16, and 6 points in his first 3 weeks. He had 18 attempts against Seattle. The problem
that was a bloodbath.
The problem is through 3 weeks, this team looks so bad. So incredibly hard to watch bad.
They're a lock for the first overall pick at this point.
I think they are. And the other thing is he's still getting the volume and he's not necessarily producing because they just cannot get in the end zone. They can't get in the red zone is the problem. I mean, they got shellacked by a Seahawks team that I consider to be mediocre at best. Yeah. And so that really does hurt. I mean, Kamara has been able to transcend that for years. And again, we've talked about this. He's one of the most consistent running backs ever to play in fantasy football, ever. He's running back 15 coming into today. I mean, it's just 6 points is not going to cut it. And I think you're going to see more weeks with this. In a game where they pass the ball, I mean, Spencer Rattler has continued to pass the ball quite a bit when you're looking at 46, 34, and 39 attempts, and Kamara only gets 2 targets today. I mean, it's not encouraging. My panic meter for Alvin Kamara at this point, based on where he's priced, is probably kind of the same as Chase, 5 or 6 for me. Now, the nice thing is, I think he's overranked by a lot of people at this point because from what I'm seeing through 3 weeks, I'm not sure how you can be that aggressive ranking Alvin Kamara with the offense as bad as it is in terms of scoring touchdowns. I'm not sure how you can be as aggressive ranking him. But when I'm looking at the expert consensus rankings on Flock, and I'm seeing Alvin Kamara next to Josh Jacobs, Bucky, and Genty, and Hampton, and Brees, and Kyron, I'm like, well, if I really am that worried about Kamara, and if you really are that worried about Kamara, you could just trade him for one of those guys. And my guess is in almost every league, you're going to be able to get one of those deals done. And so I'm worried, I'm concerned, but it just tracks that an offense that can't get in the red zone and score touchdowns, an offense that looks like it's going to have the number 1 overall pick, an offense that has Spencer Rattler, who really shouldn't be a starting NFL QB throwing the ball. He really shouldn't. It really does track that Alvin Kamara hasn't really been eye-popping through the first 3 weeks, and I don't really think he's going to be eye-popping. At some point or another, Alvin Kamara, who's 30 years old, was going to kind of slow down, and I don't think that we should be surprised that it happened to come on a year where the offense was historically poor. And so with Kamara, I'm a little bit panicked, but I also think you can get out on him in a good price, so that makes me a little bit more comfortable. I would explore your offers. If you have Kamara, I would just shop him. I think you'll get a decent deal for him still. That would be my 2 cents.
Marvin Harrison Jr., we got to talk about him at this point. 2 straight weeks where he's just had lackluster performances. 4 points against Carolina. That one, honestly, in terms of his usage, was a lot uglier than what his potential upside was in the San Fran game. I'm just going to be honest. My panic meter for Marvin Harrison at this point is probably the same as you would be with Chase, like a 5 right now. I'm pretty ticked, honestly. Like, Marv lost me the week this week.
You got to tick that sucker up. I'm telling you.
What?
You got to tick that sucker up. I'd be at a 7 if I were you.
I'm really not happy. You're looking at the first 3 weeks, 6, 5, and 6 targets. He's on the field constantly, does not get targets. Kyler Murray hates him. And oh, by the way, when he gets wide butt open and should be hauling in touchdowns, he has stone hands. I mean, the QJ memes, cue up the QJ memes. Marvin Harrison is now the new QJ. This dude is just, when he already has less volume than a premier alpha wide receiver in the NFL, you have to expect him to capitalize on the limited opportunity that he's going to get, which again, as a true X wide receiver, you expect him to do that. And he does show that sometimes. Again, generally when he gets receptions, they're like 20-plus yard receptions. So you get a lot when Marv gets his catches. But they are so few and far between right now. In 2 weeks, he has combined for 5 catches. He cost me the league. He cost me my matchup against Mason this week. He cost me. And now I'm going to go 1-2, and now I'm going to go 1-3 because Sal is my next opponent. And again, this is the risk that I took on when I drafted Marvin III. This is the risk that you took on when you drafted Marvin III. We expected, looking at his game log last year, 3, 8, 11, 6, 7, 2, 6, 7, 5, 5, 6, 12, 8, 6, 8, 10, 6. We expected weeks 12 through 18. We're getting more like weeks 7 through 12, and that might just be what Marv is right now in this offense. This is 35% Marv because he actually needs to catch his freaking wide open opportunities. And I'd say this is 65% Kyler Murray. Kyler does not look for him. Kyler does, and they're like, when you watch Kyler, and I'm sure you've been watching some of the Cardinals games, when you watch him in the pocket and you watch him look downfield, he looks for like a half second and then he's immediately looking for his check down. He looks like Daniel Jones right now, or like Daniel Jones used to look like until he turned into, I don't even know what Daniel Jones is right now, but he's better than Kyler. Kyler's pocket presence is not that great. He is not poised in the pocket at the moment. He is not patient enough to wait for your guys to get open. Your best guys. I mean, some of this is McBride as well. Like
they're also not winning routes. They're not getting open very well. So it's kind of the same thing like you see with Tua. Like if you watch those Miami receivers, they're not getting open at a super high rate. And so, but at the same time, it's you're right. It's somewhat on Marv. It's somewhat on Kyler. But like I'd be panicked at a 7 right now.
This is brutal. This is again a shot that I took in the 3rd round where I was hoping that Marv was going to win me a lot of weeks and then not really lose me a ton. And so far he has lost me 2 and he has contributed to me winning 1 in the first 3 weeks. It's a 2-to-1 ratio. And if it continues like that for the rest of the season, then your boy's going to be screwed.
We obviously have moved these guys down our rest of season rankings. You can see our full rest of season rankings for free over on the site. I've got the link below. Just create a free account with code domain. You can plug your team into our My Teams tool and see where you rank so far. You can also get our rankings. And again, we are doing team reviews as well. So if you'd like to get a whiteboard from us, we can take a look at your team, do it on a live stream, give you a full review, and then we send you over this full thing for you to see with your team on it and the moves you should make. Ideally, that would help you potentially win your league. And so you can check all that out in the links in the pinned comment. But I want to talk about Chuba Hubbard because Chuba had 17, 18 points, but he came out this week and had 9.6 points. And I just don't see a glaring difference between what I saw in the first 2 weeks compared to this week, outside of the fact that he just didn't have a touchdown. In fact, he had, receiving touchdowns in the first 2 weeks. He still doesn't have a rushing touchdown on the year. And I think why people are going to be a little bit concerned about Chuba Hubbard is what you saw in this game is that Rico Dowdle came in multiple times in the red zone. He ended up vulturing a touchdown. And even though Chuba, 17 carries to Rico Dowdle's 10, I mean, Rico Dowdle's more involved this week. More involved this week than he was in week 1 and 2. 3, 6, and 10. He's slowly creeping up in terms of the amount of carries they're giving him. Now, are you freaking out about Chuba? In my opinion, no. He's still getting 20 touches in this game. He's had 16 touches, 21 touches, and 20 touches in his first 3 weeks. And to me, a guy that's getting 20 touches, even in a not super awesome, fantastic offense, like that's still a good thing. It's still positive. So with Chuba, my panic meter is probably a 2 or a 3. I'm really not that panicked.
It would be a 2 for me as well.
Yeah.
I'm not.
I think with Chuba, I think with Chuba, he's a good hold right now, and that's really the most important thing. I wouldn't be looking to shop him, and honestly, he's somebody you still have to start every week, in my opinion. So continue to hold Chuba Hubbard.
So what do we do with Josh Downs? I mean, right now, my panic meter for Josh Downs, when Tyler Warren has a lackluster performance, Alec Pierce is outproducing Josh Downs, Michael Pittman is going bananas. I mean, Josh Downs, really, when you're looking at snap share there, I mean, he's the third wide receiver there. Alec Pierce would have been on the field more today if he had not gotten injured. But he was on the field more. He outsnapped him. He still outsnapped him, even though he missed like a good chunk of the game at the end of the game. Downs had 29 snaps to Pittman's 46. Yeah. You're looking at Tyler Warren. He had 39 snaps to Josh Downs' 29 and Michael Pittman's 46. Those three guys, Pierce, Pittman, and Warren, are their go-tos schematically. They do 2 wide receiver sets with Warren lined up as a wide receiver, and then Downs is the third guy there, essentially, as a wide receiver. So my panic meter for Josh Downs at this point is probably a 6, because I don't know, like a 3-target game week 1, an 8-target game week 2, a 3-target game week 3 against Tennessee. He's a schematic hit or miss boom bust guy effectively at this point in time for the Colts, I think, rest of the season. And I think that's probably what you're going to be looking at with Downs for the rest of the year, in my opinion. I mean, against the Rams and then Vegas over the next couple of weeks and then Arizona, some of these matchups are just going to be schematically dependent. If you have a premier corner that's lined up against Michael Pittman for the day, then you're going to see more opportunity for Downs. Hence, when Downs was getting a ton of targets when Pat Surtain was lined up against Michael Pittman with Denver. But when you've got Tennessee, again, this is just something that you can't consistently rely on. You can't even, for Downs being a guy that you were expecting to be like a flexible option week in and week out, he's not. He's not. So my panic level is a 6 right now.
I would probably say at this point, Josh Downs is somebody we were very high on. I ended up taking Michael Pittman in the flock league, and Michael Pittman looks like the wide receiver to own that offense at this point. Through 3 weeks, 28 and 19 points. The only time he scored 119 points was when Pat Surtain was on him. I mean, this looks like Michael Pittman's offense now that he doesn't have a broken back again. And so I'm slightly concerned about Josh Downs as well, guy. We were very high on, admittedly, and we'll have to see how this plays out rest of the season. Let's talk about DeAndre Swift. When you're looking at his touches through the first 3 weeks, 17 attempts, 5 targets, so 22 total touches in week 1, 12 and 3, so 15 in week 2, and then 13 and 4, so 17. I mean, it's not great, but what are you actually ranking DeAndre Swift as? A low-end running back 2 right now? That's what he is. And so, I'm not panicking on Swift too much because I just think you drafted Swift to be this guy. But, a borderline flexible guy, because a lot of people are going to point to Kyle Monangai. Keep in mind, Swift entered today with an injury. Monangai was always going to have somewhat of a role, and he gets 6 attempts and 1 target in this game, but only scores 3 points. Swiftie has 10 points. I mean, it just looks like Swiftie's hovering around that 10 to 15-point range, kind of more on the low end of that. And I think that's what we should come to expect from DeAndre Swift this season. Now, in terms of where he's ranked over on the site, I mean, he's ranked pretty low next to guys like Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Tony Pollard, J.K. Dobbins, Jalen Warren. I mentioned this, but if you moved from Swiftie to you can't get Judkins done now, but the guys right above Swiftie are Judkins, Henderson, Javonte, Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard. If you can add just a little piece on top of Swiftie to go get one of those guys, I would. But in terms of my panic meter for Swiftie, I'm going to say probably a 4. I don't love that he's not getting more touches in an offense that, has been productive through the first couple weeks, where Rome Odunze has been very productive there for the first couple weeks. But at the same time, I don't know that DeAndre Swift was ever going to be a 15-point per game guy. In fact, I just don't think he is. And in fact, when you're looking historically at his entire career, he has consistently been the running backs 18, 15, 21, 20, 19, and 20, and now so far this season, 22. AKA, he's performing exactly where he always has. And I think what we were hoping for is in the Chicago offense, where he was going to be a true bell cow with Ben Johnson, that he was going to unlock this new ceiling, and we were going to be able to point to him and say, okay, with Swiftie, maybe he's got high-end running back 2 upside. I don't think it's happening. I personally, if you have Swiftie, I think he's probably, again, if you can sell him for the guys ahead of, we have ranked to have him on the site, yeah, sure, do it. But outside of that, I mean, he's exactly what you drafted him to be. You didn't draft him all that high anyways. And so with Swiftie, I would say it's probably a 4 or a 5. I mean, it's not really panic time. It's more or less, I kind of expected this from Swiftie. I don't know what your thoughts are on Swift, but.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm probably like a 5, because this is a situation where in Chicago, pretty much their whole offense seems to be run through the passing game, and like at least the explosive part of their offense. Caleb Williams has looked really, really solid through 3 straight weeks now in terms of production, 24, 17, and 29 points, and obviously all the receivers have been the primary beneficiaries of that. Swift is honestly kind of the afterthought at this point. He really does look to be like not one of the top options there, and I think they are gonna, if they want to continue to win games, they're gonna have to lean on their receivers and Caleb passing the ball. But that's why it's probably going to be a 5 for me, is between the injury, the usage going down on the grounds compared to how you started with it in week 1. He's down to like 12, 13 carries, and Monangai has now had 2 straight weeks of 7 and 6 carries. And again, Monangai hasn't been any more efficient than Swift has been. So I'm not expecting him to like take over the job or anything like that. But again, between the way this offense has been successful, the Swift injury, and Monangai actually getting some touches, that's probably why it's going to be about a 4 or 5 for me as well. So then last guy here is going to be Darnell Mooney. Basically, Darnell Mooney, through the first 2 weeks that he's been back from his injury, has started pretty slow in terms of production, 4 and 8 points. He only had 4 targets against Minnesota, again, in a really, really rough matchup where none of the receivers produced there for Atlanta, so kind of gave everybody a break there, everybody a pass. And then Carolina, a game that we thought everybody would be productive, they were not productive, and Darnell Mooney only had 8 points. What I do want to focus on here, though, is not the points, but the targets for Mooney, where he had actually 11 targets. He out-targeted Drake London on the day. I don't think that's going to happen every single week. I do think, obviously, schematically, talent-wise, Drake London's the number 1 option there. And they were down by a lot, so they had to take shots downfield, hence the 11 targets for Mooney. I will say, for a guy that is constantly on the field, 59 snaps, 39 routes run, getting 10, 11 targets, like that is a good sign. When you saw what he was able to do last season, he had some big target weeks. He would go anywhere from 7, 6 to like upwards of 15, 16 targets. He's going to settle in that like wide range of 7 to 14 targets probably any given week, which I do think is really solid for a guy that has very big play upside. Once these touchdowns start rolling in, he's going to be fine. He really is like kind of a throw-in guy when you're talking about trade negotiations, because he's a guy that you're looking to flex any given week. So if you do, or if you are forced to make a down tier, or you're trying to get an extra wide receiver included in a deal, try to get Darnell Mooney, because I don't think many people are valuing him in terms of what his ceiling really could be this season.
So again, hopefully this gives you some clarity on guys that really aren't performing right now. We might be panicked on them, but at the end of the day, I mean, there are solutions for every single one of these guys if you really are panicked on them, and so you just have to keep your composure. Some of them you just need to stick it out, and other ones you may be able to move at a decent price. So do us a huge favor, drop a like on the video. Make sure you're subscribed. If you have watched the videos consistently, subscribing really helps us out, and you also get our videos as soon as they come out. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you later.